Hey, hello everyone. It is 4 o'clock in the afternoon here in Southern California on Friday afternoon. It's 7 o'clock over there in the East Coast. It's getting dark because we've had daylight saving time, but don't get me started on that. It is evening over there in Europe. It might even be Saturday, depending on where you are in the world. But no matter where you are, you know what time it is. It's time for Cinema Crusaders, that show where we take a look back at old movies that we think deserve another look most of the time. And then there's this movie, but we'll get to that in just a moment. But we are doing and continuing on this journey and looking back at old movies. And what we are doing now, and it's a format that we really love, is we are taking an actor from the previous movie we covered and taking them forward into another movie and doing this 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, but for just actors in general. And it's been a great examination of many different movies that we didn't know about before. So, hold on, I brought Jeff in too early. But before we get into this movie, which is The Appointment from 1981 or 1982, depending on which source you're looking at, and we brought Ed Woodward back forward from Wicker Man over into this movie, which is The Appointment. I need to introduce my fellow Cinema Crusaders who are here for the ride with me to go on this strange and wonderful, most of the time, journey into cinema that we are on. So first, I'm going to introduce to you a man who is multi-talented. He's a writer and an educator, an English professor, and an aficionado into comics. He is with me on several different podcasts, and we play D&D together as well. I'm talking about none other than Steve Shadewing Sellers. How you doing, Steve?
Oh man, this movie. Thank you, Jeff, for suggesting this film. This movie, I can't really get over it. It's like it's like, you know how Seinfeld says that it's a show about nothing. This is a movie about nothing, and you have to do the work of the movie the whole way through to make sense of any of it. I mean, there are things, and the weird thing is there are things in it that are interesting. There are things in it that even are well done from time to time, but it doesn't add up to anything concrete. And it's just really, really disappointing because there are just moments where it's like, okay, there's something clever here. And then for every moment like that, there's like 30 minutes of nothing happening. I mean, you know how it's like Man of the Hands of Fate is my favorite bad movie of all time. And that has like a long driving sequence where nothing happens. This is worse than that in terms of pacing. And you know, this I don't know what they were thinking with this movie. It's so disjointed. It is so poorly paced. And yet there are things in it that I find really interesting. So I'm looking forward to getting into those.
Well, there is some confusion, and when I introduce Jeff, he will clear that up for us because I'm not sure. It may have been my fault. I might have gotten the wrong movie, so we shall see when Jeff comes on and I introduce him. Even if I did get the wrong movie, we may have discovered a hidden turd that we needed to talk about. So, you know, whatever it is. Next, I'm going to introduce another incredibly talented man. He is just back from a film festival where he has won an award again. It's getting the old hat for him, but he never tires of winning. He also has his Bob non-union psychic comics, which are incredibly fun. So go check this out. I'm talking about the man behind Warehouse 9 Pro, none other than Lance Lucero. How you doing, Lance?
I'm doing good, and this is going to be a fun mistake to cover. I will say, I scratched my head about this film and went down a rabbit hole of research, which didn't take a lot of research because there's not on this film, and probably for good reason. But I will say this is not a new rediscovered gem of a film, but I think we may immortalize it as such. I'm going to be interested in discussing this, and even if you read the synopsis, it doesn't correlate to what we watched. The synopsis doesn't even match. If you look at anything from Internet Movie Database to whatever internet sources, it does not. To the poster doesn't even match. The taglines don't match. They did everything they could to get you to watch this movie, and in some cases it worked. But this is a perfect example of what the hell are we watching? It makes zero sense, but well executed, and it's 0 cents.
Yeah. We could throw up some of those posters at some point because you look at the posters, a lot of them, and they are straight up fire, a lot of them. And
right,
like,
they're great
whoa.
advertising, and it's like,
and they're straight up lies.
right, it's a blatant misadvertisement.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to say the least. And last but not least, he is the right-hand man at Raincross Press. He is an incredibly talented artist and writer. Look for his Symbols of Liberty and Mr. Happy Comics, as well as his work that he is doing for Raincross, which will be coming out in the future. He is on many different podcasts with me, and we also play D&D together. I'm talking about none other than Jeff Bracey.
All right, I'm going to put down the hate and start bringing some fiery love for this.
Oh,
I knew
no.
absolutely, yes, indeed. I knew nothing about this other than I wanted to cover a horror movie for Halloween, but our schedule got muddled because of delays. Excalibur went into October, and I didn't want to go with Christopher Lee. It's really easy to find something cool with horror with Christopher Lee. So I decided to go with Edward Woodward. And found this really obscure TV movie. And I've watched a couple of clips, and I was immediately intrigued. Now, I can see why there is some confusion and some derision, but I'll say watching this with fresh eyes, knowing almost nothing about it, I dig it. I dig this film. And I am prepared to defend that. So I have drawn my line in the sand.
Well, draw your weapon and hold your shield, sir, because the best thing I can say about this movie for me is that I'm an insomniac, and this movie helped me immensely.
I'm going to put you haters down. I'm going to be bringing it hardcore. You think our Alien versus Predator was a head-to-head matchup? Here we go. Let's bring it.
All right. I am ready to do it. Let us join battle. So, first of all,
Or I should say Alien versus Predator 2.
I have to show you all this. Hold on. Come on. Do this for me. There we go.
For those who are watching, that was actually a sloppy spoilers production, the Alien versus Predator 2.
Yeah. It's not a good movie, but Jeff made a very good argument for it.
Come on.
And it's okay. It's okay to have differing opinions. Listen, right. Hollywood, it's okay if people like your film. It's okay if people don't like your film.
This is very small, but if you could zoom in on your screen.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
The poster's badass.
That is one of the cover art for the movie. Now, I look at that cover art, and I'm like, I'm prepared for some slasher horror stuff with some woman who, I don't know what's going on there, but it looks pretty fire, you know?
Hey, look at you. You're expecting like a Zoltan Hound of Dracula or Devil Dog, aren't you?
Yeah.
Or Zool.
Instead, what I got is oh man, I got to be careful because I work for a British comic company. A very British take on British life, which I was like, wow, okay. So, but to sum it up, we start off with what is, to my mind, is the best scene in the movie, where it's this girl, and there's a voiceover from what is probably a police officer, and he's talking about the disappearance of this girl and what happened, and she left her friends, and she went walking through this particular passage in the forest, and she hears these voices calling her name, and it's very evocative. I had in my mind like witches or it's a supernatural or something, and at one point there's a very standard run-of-the-mill rope pole stunt trick where she's pulled into the woods, disappears. It's not clear exactly what was left in her wake, but she's gone. So I'm like, oh, we got monsters. We got something going on. That's it. We never get a reference to that ever again for the rest of the movie.
You are wrong, and I will tell you how you're wrong later.
Okay. What follows after that is we follow Diane, who is the most immature and spoiled 14-year-old girl that I have ever met in my entire life. And her father has to not go to her recital. And what follows after
devastating. It's devastating. It's pure drama. I mean, the acting is riveting about him not being able to go to her her solo recital. I mean, I tell you, I have not seen acting like this since I don't know when. Wow, I was riveted.
Yeah. And Ed Woodward as Ian, the father, his Mini Cooper has been shut down, and for some reason, the mechanic who denied him his Mini Cooper is going to get his later in the movie. That was a whole thing. I'm not sure how that came in, but yes. So he has this other car, and what follows after that is Diane being bratty, and then Diane going to sleep. Diane having dreams, Ian having dreams, Ian's wife having dreams. They're all premonitions of something bad happening, and we don't know. Diane may or may not be involved with this, and we have about 50 to 60 minutes of very British dreams going on, which are, to my mind, boring and some more boring. And there's some very artsy, there's some very artsy imagery in
Philistines. I'm surrounded by Philistines.
Remember, we also have Rottweilers, well-trained Rottweilers. We also have possessed cars.
Look, Lance remembers more than you. Stay awake and watch the movie next time.
This is true. It is the 80s, and Rottweilers and Dobermans are all the thing if we want to portray.
Cujo was big still.
Yep, Satan's preferred hound in the 80s were Rottweilers.
Yes. Dobermans come in a close second. So yes, we have all of that going on, and then the dreams come true, and then the worst seatbelt reveal of all time. Yes, that is the great horror reveal, and then and we also had some red paint dripping down after somehow a transmission sucked up and destroyed and killed a mechanic underneath the car. I'm not sure how that happens. I'm not a big car aficionado, but I'm fairly certain you wouldn't get sucked up like that. You might lose your hand, perhaps, depending on where your hand is. But to pull an entire man up, that was one powerful ass Mini Cooper. That's all I'm going to say. And then after that, the daughter doesn't really give a shit and goes to the scene of the crime, where there's now a huge iron fence where you can't walk in those woods anymore. And she removed her father's picture, which even among those of us who didn't like the movie, we can't agree whether or not Diane is the antagonist or not. Yeah. That's how confused we all were. And thus the movie ends. And so with that, with my obviously not very rosy review of the film, I'm going to turn this right over to Jeff to let him explain what he saw in this hidden gem of horror, as been described.
This lost gem. Remember, the negative is even lost.
I will be happy to, because your summation is bullshit. You like that was like
better than the summation that's on Internet Movie Database. It's better than the summation that's listed. None of the synopses even match what this movie is. They can't explain it.
That's my friend there.
The synopsis I read said like a family is stalked by a supernatural force. There's an impending doom. That's the movie I saw. You're not even Wikipedia level as far as like following that. Like IMDb gave me more information on the film than you did. That was more accurate. Holy crap! All right,
Jeff,
let's get into this.
When you say I'm not Wikipedia level, my response to you is, thank you.
That's probably good.
It wasn't a compliment. It wasn't a compliment. All right. So, this movie indeed has one of the best cold opens I've ever seen in a movie. Absolutely stunning. Now, I did see that Steve said, like, and all you guys are going like, oh, there's a whole lot of nothing. There's a whole lot of stuff going on throughout this movie. You guys just did not appreciate. Now, the cold opening is amazing. I was getting, like, Stalker vibes, Evil Dead vibes. You've got some similar sort of camera work. The cinematography is absolutely beautiful. This film is directed and written by a fellow, or perhaps woman. Let's see, Lindsay C. Vickers.
Yeah.
This is a TV movie, so it's a little different for those of you who are expecting a film. It is a TV movie, and it was supposed to be the first episode in a series called A Step in the Wrong Direction. So if you think of things like Tales from the Crypt, The Hitchhiker from HBO, things like that, although I'm rather surprised that they did a full movie. That's a very intriguing idea that they would do a show that was a full movie. Now, I don't know how they were going to handle that over there in Britain. They do things a little bit differently. Like we have our seasons run for like 22 episodes for TV, and they'll do maybe 6 to 8 episodes. So a very different sort of structure they have over there. Now, the cold opening is great. I actually love that, and especially the violence that snatches the girl, Evil Dead style, into the woods. I mean, they obviously use a dummy to do this rope pull, anything but standard, because that was
Uh,
incredibly violent, man. Like
that
she
that
almost
might not
got
have been a
broken in
bit.
half,
That might have
and
been a
then you,
stunt double. It might
It
have
was
been
a
a stunt
dummy.
double.
yeah, it was
was a
not a
dummy.
stunt double.
Okay.
Yeah, you would like that that thing. It was cut brilliantly, but like the ragdoll on that was just too much for a human body to handle. And then the added effect of like her musical instrument being crushed by an invisible force. So like, okay, I'm already in. Now, I was worried it was going to be very slow to start with. After that, you've got my attention. As they start ramping up, you start to get like, okay, Ian's kind of humdrum. He's got some problems. It's like, okay, this is kind of lackadaisical. Can we get something better? But then it goes back up as soon as we get back to the home, and he has to explain to his daughter, and you start to learn that they have a very bizarre relationship. And at first, I thought this movie was going to go in a whole different direction. I thought we were going to find out that Ian was actually a sexual predator.
Yes.
There's even an
Agreed.
illusion in the film where they have the voiceover, which was oddly unnecessary. You could have just had like a report on a TV or something doing it. There is some confusion about the way the film is handled like that. You started like, is it docudrama or what are they trying to do here? And they said like, an incredibly powerful psychopath, just tore this poor girl apart. And then you find out Ian's relationship with his daughter is very strange. Now, like Lance is bagging our performance, but what I get out of the girl is that creepy ass stare that she uses quite effectively in two scenes. In the scene where she's going at him when they're in the living room, and she at first almost appears to be trying to seduce her dad in front of her mom. And so I'm thinking like I'm getting flashes of the Bell Witch from say like 20 2010 or so. If you've seen that one, Lance, where like Donald Sutherland was having a sexual relationship with his daughter, unwanted, as it should be, and that manifested in a parapsychological phenomenon that was a poltergeist, which was haunting the home and eventually took her id vengeance out on her father and psychic fury. And I thought, okay, maybe this is the way we're going to go, because the imagery we start getting is really leading into that. When the dad's having these dreams of doom, the dad can't sleep. He goes downstairs, and these Rottweilers appear, and they magically make their way into the house, and it's padding in there like a really effective shot of the Rottweiler's feet padding in. And you get this kind of thump, 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 kind of doom heartbeat kind of sound going on. Dad wakes up and there's nothing there. Dad goes upstairs. He's drawn to the daughter's door. The daughter is awake, eyeing the door with a creepy smile, getting broader and broader on her face expectantly. As like, oh man, this is going in some real nightmare fuel territory. And what do we see? We see a vase of flowers, and the petals start falling off. The flowers are the vase is getting deflowered. So I'm putting all this imagery together. And sometimes, Steve, it's not about doing the work of the movie. It's about sort of going in the direction of, say, a Fulci or a Bava, where it's more about the style of the thing. It's more about the impression of the thing. Everything doesn't have to be spelled out all the time. But I'm picking up what's coming down. And then he leaves, and then the wife scares them almost to death because he's almost caught in the act. This is all the vibe I'm getting. This is all the subtext I'm getting from this. But there's this weird supernatural element that is in there, this impending doom. So I'm thinking there's a supernatural element. If the daughter and the father are having a strange relationship, we know the daughter has these imaginary friends she talks to at the former crime scene. And later on, we see more of that. And there is a mention of potential witches, aliens, serial killers, all kinds of things. It's my inference that this girl has made some sort of pact with an evil force, because we see she has taken belongings from her home that indicate her father out into the woods almost as an offering. And we see at the end, like she's actually speaking to the three Rottweilers that are out there. And this is payback for not getting her way, not getting something, or for an inappropriate relationship between her and her father. And the whole time I'm watching this film, I am getting this impending sense of unease. There's like a sword of Damocles hanging over this family. And I really like the way the Rottweilers kept being used at all these different parts. And in some ways, it reminded me also of Final Destination, where like your doom is unescapable. And if you're like tangentially attached to the person who is doomed, you can also be doomed. And for instance, the mechanic, because we see the very part that's broken on his rental car is the same part that's broken on his car. So no matter what vehicle he was going to take, the same mechanical malfunction was waiting on him. So it's a doomed destiny. And it ends up being fulfilled because there's some sort of black magic hoodoo that's going on. And my take on it is sometimes I just don't need everything spelled out. I like the ambiguity, I like the vagueness, and I like being able to put my own story to it, and wondering whether or not I'm correct in the assumption. But either way, I think it's about to lead to a very lively discussion. So have at it.
Sir, you belong on a spelling bee because you spelled out everything for the movie. So there it is.
Well, and even in its grand nature of disformity, because when you look at the opening sequence, it was tacked on because they didn't want people to get bored and turn the channel. So it was literally tacked on to keep people from turning a channel. So, and in that effect, it worked. But did it work effectively enough? You figure it out an extra 10 minutes into the story. It's like
it kept me in the film.
It's like, okay, I see what you're doing, but that's a cheap gimmick to keep you watching something that you know isn't going to come together cohesively, even for television. Now, granted, looking at the movie, I was like, okay, yeah, this is top-notch television production and sound design. I liked when the pedals were hitting the table. You know, I liked the squeaks. I liked everything about the design of it. It's not unpleasing to watch, even though it has that made-for-TV overlit look. Okay, whatever. It's composed for that. But in a sense, visually, that's where it gets uncinematic and it doesn't work. It's like you need a little bit more mood to be set. Otherwise, it reads out as an overlit stage play. It doesn't have a vibe or a mood that's needed to really suck you in, like something more cinematic. But that's the difference between made-for-TV and theatrical releases, and that's why they're trying to make more TV movies look more cinematic so they can try to capture that vibe in this new video age. Is it working? No, it's failing miserably. And when you look at a movie like this, it's like, well, if your story was solid in your 5-act structure and you can carry it, you didn't need to tack that opening on. I think it could have just rode without that opening. And it was amateurish. When they start to do the narration, they're pulling the typical mistakes that Kubrick made. They're baiting you with narration, and that narration has to keep flowing throughout the narrative in order for it to add up in the end. You're right, Jeff. They shouldn't have had the narration.
The narration absolutely did not work.
It would have worked with just the vibe. But even stripping that out, it didn't correlate to the rest of the story. It was a cheap gimmick. It was like, why'd you guys do that? That's not cool because that's an interesting story you're telling right now. And then we go to this spoiled brat tale, and looking at that girl, I've seen potatoes that cried better than she did.
But like, can they stare into your soul like
with
that?
Onions?
With onions, yeah, with a little bit of salsa. And I'm like, I couldn't. I started laughing. I
think she got hired based on her stare down.
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to commit a horror sin, but I don't care because this is the day where we're just spitting facts. She was as boring as Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. Really. That's exactly who she reminds me of. I think that the actress who played Nancy watched this performance and tried to do the exact same thing. It was like she was milquetoast. It really was bad. So.
And isn't that a driving force for a story? You know, this jealous little girl that he can't make the recital to. Yes, I understand the impending doom of maybe something inappropriate that may be going on. That's definitely alluded to. But at the same token, I don't think she's pushing it away. I don't think she is actually defending it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And then to just get mad and replace one of his pictures when they're all over that room, I'm like, well, what's going on
Oh.
here? But this is a situation where you keep looking at the movie and going, what's going on here? Why are car lights lighting up? Why is it lighting up? Why are car lights lighting up in a garage? You know, why are the Rottweilers there? You know, there's a motivating factor that has to compel the viewer to keep viewing without question. Now, yes, we don't need to be spoon-fed a narrative, but on the same token, we can't just be left hanging constantly because it's like, well, wait a second, what's the through line of the characters? Where is their arch? Sure, they don't necessarily have to change or learn or what have you, but there needs to be something there to keep us going. And when the dad dies in the end, so what? Who cares? At least something happened. The movie's over. Great. Let's move on.
Well, I'm going to go to Steve in a second, but
I mean, come on. The Rottweilers are clearly the avatars for the evil force at work. I mean, they're even on the side of the truck that causes him to have the accident. You know, it's.
right.
I don't understand why that's such a big leap. And the car lights lighting up while he's having the dream about dying in the car that's in the garage.
Well, but the car lit up. The car lights lit up in the other garage too of his other car. And I get what you're saying. I mean, I saw all the same imagery.
They're both getting evil.
You know, and I picked up.
It just requires us to do too much work to put it all together. I mean, so a certain amount of hinting and whatnot,
I didn't feel like I was doing work.
It overdoes it. It just overdoes it. And puts too much of it.
Maybe I've watched too many.
We're watching 4 different movies based on the same thing we're seeing.
Maybe I've watched too many movies from the 70s, and I like this stuff because this felt very 70s for me. But I didn't feel like I was having to work to get there, and I like just that overwhelming dread that was building up. Like even when he's riding in the car, he keeps looking around like he's like, I feel like there's somebody in the car with me. He doesn't have to explicitly say it. But I really am getting that sort of final destination. It's just looming on you, and no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to escape it.
But why is he looking around? Is there anything in there to give you any indication that he should be looking around, other than the fact that? But
my assessment was it was deja vu.
He's haunted by that sensation of impending doom.
I didn't get the impending doom. I got that maybe it was deja vu-esque. That this was familiar. And then I left it at that. So,
but even in the dream, and
he did clearly remember the dream because he said that to his wife.
Well, see, in the dream, he still looked around in the car. Like he felt like there was something. The first turn he does is he looks in the passenger seat. So, like you get that, like, oh, there's something. No, nothing in the car. And then he looks in the back seat. Like, I feel something. You can read that in his actions of what's going on. And then that manifests again when he's actually on the highway. And there's so many times when he's sitting there, he's getting those little haunted moments. I love the way they use sound when he's at the diner. And, you know, they're doing some work. They're grinding. And under that grinding, you hear the squealing of the tires, the blown out tires. And it just keeps getting a little bit louder, a little bit louder, a little bit louder.
I thought you could have cut that whole part out and lost nothing because and that's one of my major problems with the movie. I'm picking up on the stuff you're putting down, but it seemed like that a large part of this movie was just a collection of artsy thriller type horror scenes put in there.
It is very artsy, I'll give you that.
I do not want to watch 10 minutes of this guy, you know, having his lunch and reading through a newspaper, you know, to get to the stuff that matters.
I will concede that they probably could have trimmed it down to say 80 minutes just to give it a movie length runtime. Well, and that would have saved you 16 minutes of unnecessary extra.
I would say that they could have used that 16 minutes to actually
the movie probably could have been
do the rest of the writing. So, because I don't think that they ever pay off any of the things they build. There's no finale to this movie. They set up a number of different arcs and they never see them through. In fact, they abandon quite a few of them once they've introduced, and you know, I think the writing is one of the worst things here. And Lindsay Vickers, who is the director, is the same person who wrote this, and I think that she gives you a ton of cool scenes that you could use as examples in film school of ways to build tension or suspense in a horror movie. But I don't think any of them are consistent or are paid off in her writing or in the end of the film. I don't think there's a consistent antagonist. I think it's clear to me that Diane is supposed to be the antagonist, but it's like you need to tie that.
You could easily interpret it in a way that says that there is no antagonist.
Yeah.
Now I will agree with this point. I think they should have featured Diane a little bit more if they want to solidify her as the antagonist, because kind of once Dad gets on the road, she's just kind of out of the picture.
And I can agree with you that I think Diane is a Lolita. You know, once they get out of the house, I don't think that it's the dad doing stuff. I think Diane is a Lolita. You know,
but you know, it made me glad the movie went with a supernatural premise, because I was like, this is about to get really icky, the direction it's going in.
But I'll tell you now, this is Lindsay Vickers' last job as a director. You know, so
first and last.
And I will say the actress who played Diane was in Superman 4, and that probably ended her career too.
Right. I saw that too.
And before that, you know, and I'm just going to throw this out there, and I'm not going to comment on it, but before that, she was third or second assistant directors on movies like Taste the Blood of Dracula, The Virgin and the Gypsy, The Vampire Lovers, Scars of Dracula, Lust for a Vampire, Doom Watch, Vampire Circus.
Okay, so she'd been part of the Hammer Circle.
Yeah. And it's easy to see in all aspects, but remember, this is a pilot, and this version that we saw, once again, we really don't know. We've been through this too many times now with Brazil, with Greystoke, with Wicker Man. Now this, we don't know what version this is. We don't know
that's true.
what the true version is. So we could be getting the crap version. We don't know.
Yeah, because I believe this just in order to salvage it, because the project never got off the ground, that they just released it on home video.
Yeah,
VHS and Betamax.
And I think one of the greatest examples of, you know, TV executives screwing stuff up either by cutting or running stuff wrong is a Firefly, where they run all the Firefly episodes out of order, and so a season-long arc made no sense.
No,
you know, at all. And so people
I had to get the DVDs and watch them in the recommended order, you know, the production order.
Yeah, and so people who watched the show tuned out on it because they're like, this is shit. You know, they didn't know what was going on. So yeah, I mean, I see that, and maybe there is a lost cut somewhere, but this, I mean, I did pick up on all those imagery, and I thought that, like, the falling of the petals, yeah, it was cool, and these were brand new cut roses, and they're wilting, and the panels, you know, so it's like, give me something, follow up on that, you know, and then the mom comes in and she's looking at the roses. It's like, follow up. You gave us a cool image. And then the last thing I'm going to say, and I do want to go around to all of you, because I think this, you know how I love my music. The music in this is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It is generic, classical TV music. I think that it is overdone a lot of times. I have a hard time believing the director did.
I will say I like the creepy music, but there's one particular chunk of music which is like basically the main theme for this. Yeah. And I didn't like that, and I didn't, especially when it's put over the driving scenes. It didn't fit at all.
It sounds canned.
You know what it felt like to me? It felt like a Murder, She Wrote episode.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like.
They were trying to be The Shining, and yeah,
I think it's definitely canned. You know,
I knew this was going to be a good one.
Yeah, made for TV, you can guess it was canned to make sure you save a little bit of money.
Yeah, and it's like, and Steve brought this point up before, where they took every opportunity to give us suspenseful violin, a suspenseful violin concerto, a quartet, doing on everything, to the point where we didn't care whenever that happened. So
that would have been good, especially given that the music was tied into the victim and the devil girl.
Yeah. There's missed opportunities that I think that, like Nem says, you go back to bad writing, and then you capitalize on it with bad directing. It's like you have the components there for something, and this is why it didn't get picked up, and this is why it didn't turn into a popular British television show. And you had elements there that could have worked. Acting wise, I think everybody in general did a poor job. This kind of family dysfunction. Why do we need to see this? We don't need to see this. You can go home and see family dysfunction. You don't need to see this. Is this gripping? Is this cinema? Is this good TV? I don't think it is, even for 1981, 82.
All right, so let's get into the acting, because now that you brought that up,
let's give Steve a chance, because we kind of like run over.
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
Because I know Steve is about to bring the pain.
I don't know. I mean, this movie, I think, really, there are things about this movie that really are not too bad, and I don't mind, like, some of the horror elements kind of work. The way that some of these scenes are shot kind of work. The way that the father is like approaching, the girl's door and all of this sort of stuff. The shot of the roses falling, things like that. Those things kind of work. And then, and it's mixed up with all of these, the pacing that doesn't work. It's mixed up with all of these elements that don't have any payoff, like Lance said, and all of these other elements. And it's just, I mean, it's bogged. There is a story that could work. I mean, Jeff and I both found it. I mean, because I was kind of looking at this, I'm like, I can see ways this movie that could work if it had been spelled out better. Absolutely, there are ways it could work. But do they tell you? No, they make you do all the work. And it's lazy. And I'm just looking at this and I'm just saying, there was just so close, but the execution in various aspects just doesn't come together. And it really is a shame. I mean, actually, I don't think that Edward Woodward's that bad of an actor either.
I can also say that I've seen a lot of these types of scenes done better in TV. So, for instance, the scene looking at the door and giving that feeling of dread and ambiguity. Saw that in a CSI episode called The Buffalo, where the dad's going in and is impregnating his daughters. Done incredibly well.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah, the scene with
the white buffalo.
With the flowers, going. That was in Nightmare on Elm Street. I've seen that, done before, that type of thing. So I've seen these things. And so, and to
just remember, this predates all of that.
You're absolutely right. I'm looking at it with my modern eyes. It's the same reason why I cringe and roll my eyes at the Rottweilers, because I've seen the evil Rottweiler done so many damn times now that, it's a trope now. But let's get to the acting. And I mentioned Nightmare on Elm Street before, and the reason I do that is that at least two of the actors in here, and maybe three, remind me of bad acting in Nightmare on Elm Street. And I like Nightmare on Elm Street for 1984, but the dad or the mom and the daughter are on Valium in that movie. And they're in Valium in this movie as well. The mom and the daughter are boring. So I want to hear what you guys have to say. And I'm going to go to Steve first on both of those actors. And I'm going to pull up their names right now because I want to make sure.
I couldn't remember who they were.
I want to make sure we give them credit for being in this film, whether they want it or not. So Jane Merrill,
it's like, you own this. Ha ha! Take that.
Jane Merrill plays Diana, who is the I guess the mom.
She's the mom.
Yeah.
And Samantha Waysome plays Joanne, who is the daughter. So over to you, Steve. We'll talk to Edward. We'll talk about Edward Woodward by himself. So
yeah. I will say in Nancy's defense that she's well written, but yeah, she could have been acted a lot better. And there's a reason that actress didn't go too far after that. But we'll kind of move on.
You called her Nancy. It's Joanne. Nancy.
I was talking about Nancy Thompson. I was talking about. I like the character. I like the character. I thought she was written well in that movie, and I think the writing in that movie is what made me like Nancy Thompson more than the acting. But But as far as this movie, I will say, like, the mom, I just thought she was just okay. She was there. She went through the motions. The problem is she's not really given a lot to do. The writing doesn't really give her anything to work with. It's just, okay, I'm in the middle of my husband and my daughter having a fight. I'm trying to pull everything together, but, I'm having no emotional conflict or no emotional stakes. I'm kind of worried, I guess, a little bit about my husband who's on the road. Even though it's just, I mean, and she's fine. And it's not the actress's fault exactly, but she doesn't have anything to work with. And I think it kind of shows in the script. I don't think the actress seems that invested in the role, really. So it's like, okay, this is a job. This is a paycheck. I'm sure I'll go ahead and do it. And, and it's fine. But, and Samantha Weiss, she was in Superman 4. I'm just gonna have to go back and watch that.
I can't even remember what part
role
she was in that movie.
Well,
no, I don't.
Before I go to Lance, I'm going to bring some fire real quick. I think the mom's character was an emotionless Stepford wife, and I'm not sure if it is the character, the acting, or if it's because it's very British, and I'm just keeping it real. So
that's another thing that was leading me to that, inappropriate relationship between daughter and father, because I was like, this is a mother who's either like turned off of the situation, ignoring the situation, or just doesn't give a shit. Like that she's got her own sort of sociopathy going on. And to your point, Steve, don't you find it a bit weird that this was written by a woman and that's what she gave the mom?
Do we know that for sure? I wasn't.
Yeah,
sure.
she wrote and directed the film.
She wrote and directed.
Okay, okay, it was her. Yeah. Okay, yeah, okay, I didn't know that.
Or nobody else wanted to put their name on it. Oops, sorry. Did I take
these were the days where you could. These were still the days where you could still use Alan Smithy.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So over to you, Lance. On
there is a very Flowers in the Attic sort of feel to some of the dream sequences. Though.
Yes,
I mean, especially when you had that weird sequence where, the father is talking to his wife, and then the wife turns into the daughter.
Yeah, man,
that was kind of weird to me. But
that was some creepy ass shit.
But it's always, again, these little fragments of things that don't add up, and for the most part are mixed up with a guy doing his morning ritual or dad reading a newspaper in a diner for 10 minutes.
Right. It's well, looking at the performers in general. Okay, let's start with the mother. Jane Marrow. I like the way she was dressed. I mean, that great 80s.
That is kind of like the highest praise you can give, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I like the hairstyle. I like the polyester. Even
all right, props to makeup and hair now.
Right, I really like that vibe of of the nightgown or the day robe with the slippers. See, this is how far, in a sense, I was starting to just drift. I was starting just to look at production design, because that was the only thing interesting about her character to me, was how she was dressed. Even the little leather gloves she had when she was trimming the flowers and all that. I thought, hey, that's a nice touch. That looks great. That's as far as I got with her. I was like, wow, she looks great. I love those 80s clothes. Even the spice rack on the background in the kitchen. And it was actually wall mounted. And it had them all listed. I was like, no, that's production design. That's where my mind was going sometimes. I was like, if you're not interesting enough to keep me engaged, I'm going to start charisma. There was none. None of these people had charisma. Not even
for the horror, stay for the spice rack. So.
Right. And I was like, and I will say it, Joanne, the actress that played Joanne, I've seen potatoes cry harder than her. I didn't buy her for a second. It's like, you have something there. It could have casting could have changed this dramatically. With the right cast and the right performers, I could have flipped on a dime and said, wow, this was really good. But it didn't even have that in my opinion. It didn't have that.
How dare
I'll also add that there's a lot of Dawson's casting when it comes to the teenagers that are in this movie. Like, none of these people look like they're 12 to 14.
Right. I was thinking that when they were walking out of school. I was like, what is she, 26?
Yeah, the first girl that dies, and they said she was 12, my immediate reaction was like, bullshit. Bullshit. That is not a 12-year-old. So. Right.
So, and it's a dang shame.
But Johnny Depp looked younger in 21 Jump Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, De Niro looked great in The Irishman. You know what I mean? Bullshit.
All right, over to you, Jeff, on the mom and the daughter.
All right, you know what? This is an area where I cannot actually defend the film.
Okay.
And no, it's pretty inexcusable. The daughter's obviously completely flat. The only thing I enjoyed about her was when she's not speaking. When she's not speaking, I thought this chick was creepy as fuck. I swear, I think that's what she got hired on.
I can give you that. Yeah,
I can give you that.
I think she has a look. I think she knows how to use a look. But She can't talk and chew gum at the same time. Her lines are delivered with all the emotionality of a plank. I don't know if that was what it was supposed to be. And it worked for her in the psychosexual seduction sort of scene because it was very off-putting. It was very off-putting. Her uncanny valley approach to that moment actually worked. But when she's just being a whiny baby, I could care less. And again, with Mom, I have to wonder if this was again a matter of direction versus choices by an actress. But I'm not gonna give them that. I'm gonna say again, like, yeah,
I'm gonna announce it at the end of the show what we're doing next. But she is the one who's carrying us into the next movie.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
And she's good in the next movie.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Now Edward Woodward, I know, is a good actor. I have seen him in plenty of good things.
He's very good.
But I could tell whenever we're getting into the creepy elements of the film, I really, really, really like those parts of the film. But when we got into the melodramatic, the daytime, the humdrum stuff, I have to admit, like the rest of you, I was bored out of my mind because I was sitting there going like, wow, he's just not even trying to deliver this in any sort of interesting way. Wait, like when he's having his conversation with his mechanic friend and he's asking him, like, oh, how do you let a daughter down? You've got 3 daughters. And I just wasn't getting anything out of that. And like, I know this guy is good. And I was like, and that, like I said, in other scenes of the film, I think he really performs. But in these scenes where he's supposed to be having some sort of emotional impact, I'm not getting that from him. Especially when he feels a little bit like the henpecked husband. He's not actually the man of the house. He's deferring to his wife and his daughter, acquiescing to everything they want. And when the daughter is getting weird with him and he keeps checking with his wife, it's like, is this okay? Am I doing good? Mommy, am I doing right, sort of thing. But the scene played out too long. And the longer it played out, I felt like the mother on the couch. Like I was like, I'm getting annoyed with your performance to your daughter now because it's not selling it to me. It doesn't feel real. And it's the last thing you want as an actor. You don't want your performance to come across as a performance.
Well, it's one of those things, you have the cameras up, you have the light, you have the crew there, you have your performer in front of the camera. You want them to do something more than stare at a door.
Right.
And it's like, I get it. But does it need to go that long? And not only that, do we need a close-up of the doorknob? I mean, you're pulling focus. You're lighting the doorknob. I mean, people are getting paid, and that would drive me out of my mind. The focus of the scene is not that doorknob. It is the daughter and the father. That is poor directing, that is poor writing, and that is poor editing. They could have eliminated close-ups of a doorknob and focused on the performers. So this is a conglomerate of badness all around. Writing.
I don't know. I don't mind as somebody who works in a visual medium myself. I actually didn't mind the close-up shot on the doorknob. Now, again, it's another moment where they went too far with it.
I agree.
One nice establishing shot would have been enough. As a matter of fact, I don't know if this was a feature of the house or if somebody saw, somebody in the production team's like, that's a really cool doorknob. Let's put it in because it did draw your eye in.
There are more important shots like that throughout the entire movie, though, that linger.
I mean, it does.
The problem here,
which is why I say it should be cut by like a good 16 minutes. There is too much lingering on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like they were trying to do a jump scare type of scene with the doorknob, like trying to set up this horrific thing, and then basically sort of fizzle that, like you see in jump scares.
What it reminded me of, Steve?
But yeah,
it reminded me of like them trying to do like a film like, say, The Innocents.
Yeah. And I was just saying, I'm actually thinking in my mind, like to back to Wicker Man, where it was the focus was real in that film was more on the cop and the landlord's daughter, and the stuff that they were doing. It was not on the door. It was not on the wall between them per se.
Perfect example.
Except as a barrier for that. That's how I think that's what Lance is saying. Is it should have been more like that?
No, I
rather
get
than
that.
it being than being try to do something jump scary.
Perfect. That's a perfect analogy, and I didn't even think of that. But
That
it's
that is
almost
a
the same scenario. But you see how it was brought off and executed so much better.
And I will say this for Edward Woodward, and then I'm going to go Steve to wrap up Edward Woodward, and then we'll do our last segment. You know, I don't think Edward Woodward was given a lot to work with here. I mean, he's playing, for all intents and purposes, he's playing Arthur Dent in a less interesting role. You know,
that's a great analogy.
I mean, that is exactly who he is. He is Arthur Dent with a crazy Lolita daughter. And so I'm like, dude, you did what you could.
Hitchhiker's Guide meets Lolita.
Yeah. So
meets Warlock.
Yeah. Over to you, Steve. So
yeah, I thought that Woodward. I mean, you can definitely tell that Woodward is a good actor, and he's trying to do the best he can with the material that he has. And there are moments where I think that he actually comes across a bit better, particularly like in the scenes of the accident, and and him, dealing with the stuff that he's finding on the road, and how am I going to get over there, and do I feel bad about my daughter, and leaving her there, and there are things that he is working with a little bit, and I think he's trying. But then you have scenes where, I mean, he's talking to the mechanic, and it should have been more engaging emotionally, and it's just not. That's kind of disappointing. I mean, I think he's trying. I think he's doing the best that he can, but it's just, this is not getting the best out of him. And that's really kind of disappointing. And I agree. He's playing the British everyman. You have that British everyman character who, is kind of going through his motions. And this is kind of like why I think it's like, oh yeah, it was just a dream. Nothing bad's going to happen. It was just a dream.
He even had a bathrobe.
That's a typical.
And he was carrying a towel at one point. So there it is.
It would have been more interesting if he had had an electronic thumb. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
right.
But
what's
yeah,
so
it is
weird about
basically
this?
that.
And all the scenes, the actors are the most engaging when they don't actually have dialogue. Everybody in this film, from the mechanic
the dialogue brings it all
to
down.
the family.
Which says a lot about writing, because one of the hardest things to do writing is to do dialogue that is real and engaging,
Yeah.
So
because when Edward Woodward is trying to, get himself out of the car, he doesn't say anything, but you kind of see things on his face. You see his movements. You see him struggling, and you see him, he's in visible pain as he's trying to free himself. All those things shows that, he can act, and that's definitely on display. But, the minute anybody opens their mouth and says these lines, these not very well written lines, by the way, it just drags down otherwise, quality performances, or potentially quality performances.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe we should recut and edit this, take out all the color, and make it a silent film with like the cue cards for dialogue. It might work better.
Well, speaking of color, this is the last thing I want to talk about. Is I want to talk about production, and I didn't realize this was a TV movie. I didn't do all the research into it afterwards. I was happy to finish the movie and then to be like, I'm going to talk about it later. But
yes, let the hate flow through.
It does make sense. I will say, I want to go to Lance first, and then Steve, and then we'll finish up with Jeff and then final thoughts. But it was really dark for me at times. I had a hard time seeing stuff in the house. I checked my monitor at one point. And then the other thing I have to say, just as a general horror fan, when the mechanic gets sucked up into the Mini Cooper from hell, that was the worst blood I have ever seen ever. That was red paint.
Oh, dude, you've got to watch some. You've got to watch some Gylo. You wouldn't even bat an eye at that.
That's true. There is some horrible, and there's some samurai movies with horrible blood, but that was bad blood. You got.
It looked like wine to me. It looked like red wine.
Now, again, we've got to put this in context. This is made for TV. The British are very strict about things. They have films they've excommunicated that they put on the video nasties list. So, in order to get away with some bloodshed, you cannot have the deep, rich, thick, drippy, syrupy blood.
Well, then
you got to get a little
British
fanciful
TV.
with it.
Damn you, British
although this was the master we're getting of this film is a 1-inch beta copy of standard definition. So it is not by any stretch of the imagination going to look good. it looks decent, but it's not going to look the way it's supposed to look. And upraising that to HD, which is what they're, they did for DVD and Blu-ray, is not going to help its case. So the muddiness is going to stay there. It looked TV photography is designed to overlight because of the brightness of the old TVs. And it's usually beautifully photographed. So in the defense of the photography of this movie and the way it looks, I guarantee you it looks 10 times better than the file format we just saw. It looks 10 times better because when the Rottweilers are coming in, you can see separation. And I guarantee you could see more separation in its original negative cut. Those dogs were lit. And that's disappointing to see that. We're going to get this as future progresses. Unfortunately, we're going to get these 1 gigabyte or 500 megabyte files of these great classic movies that are going to look like shit, and people are going to think that's what they look like. That's not what they look like.
Another problem with this film is like they did not have the original negative. It's gone. This was a found leftover tape, so they just encoded it the best they could.
Right, and I have upresed. I've upresed 1-inch beta tape, broadcast quality. Upresed it to see what it looks like, and you'll cringe at your image. You'll go, "Oh my god, that looks horrible." All it's designed to do is get it into a state where you can stream it or show it digitally. It doesn't. It has no properties whatsoever that's going to help your art. It's devastating what's happening in this age.
And that's such a shame, because if I didn't know you, both of you, and talk to you about this, I would have been under the impression that this looks like crap because it was filmed like crap, just like you were saying. Because there were moments where they were in the house, like he's coming down the stairs, and all I see is the barest hint of some legs and then blackness, just a black screen.
Right.
And I was like,
and I guarantee you it was lit better than that. TV in general was always overlit, not overexposed, but overlit for the brightness. But you can still have contrast and mood. I mean, look at the old Twilight Zones, Outer Limits. Heck, look at Starsky and Hutch. They look great.
I've got another advantage in that I'm watching these films on my iPad, which has the Retina display, which really pops everything out like crazy.
Yeah, because I really was concerned there was something wrong with my monitor and ended up having to turn the brightness all the way up, which didn't do anything except give me bright muddiness.
Yeah, so, muddiness.
I mean, I watched it on my game computer, so it may have been that because I didn't notice any problems like that personally.
Okay, so I'm going to go over to you, Steve. What did you think about the production on the film? So,
from what I saw, I think we pretty much covered it pretty well. There, like I said, some of the nighttime scenes I actually kind of liked. The interior shots of the house, just kind of like the way that the camera kind of goes gradually through these things. Again, I'm kind of with Lance. I think that a lot of the time the camera is in the wrong place because it's not focusing on what the emotional the best emotional place is. It's focusing on, what is the most horrific thing we can find is, because this director comes from Hammer Horror, and she's probably kind of used to doing things that way. And because of that, it's like, okay, this is why you have these horror elements in places where it doesn't really fit. And, you're kind of and when you're sort of in a case where at that point, there's no really noticeable monster, and you kind of do those things, it just kind of seems to fizzle. Even though you can kind of see where it would technically work in a Hammer Horror film, if it was done like a traditional Hammer film. But as it is, it's like I think there are good techniques here and there, and I think a lot of that does come from the Hammer experience that Vickers has. But it's just like, maybe it's just not, I would say, focused in the right direction or in the right places, or really kind of made to work. And there are some moments where that really, you can definitely see thematic emphasis. I really thought the shot of the flowers with the petals falling was good. Particularly when the first one falls, I thought that was really powerful. It probably more so when it's a bunch of petals falling, but when it's one, that kind of starts the ball rolling. I felt like that was powerful. But it's just, there are just too many shots that, really don't quite work, even though there are elements in it that look good. It's just kind of a mess, unfortunately. And, and I think that's the real feeling for me, the disappointment. There are things in this movie I like, or I would like if it was executed better, but it just doesn't not quite coming off that way. And I think it is almost for the same reason why Manos: The Hands of Fate sticks with me. It's because you have the singular vision of one person, and it's a flawed vision. And the way that it comes across is just kind of like a really lurid and vivid, and it's a pure vision, but it's also like a vision that doesn't connect. And I find those fascinating.
And that was another thing that confused me. I'm going to go to Jeff in just a second. Is that everything else looks so muddy, but the flowers in the dark, I got the flowers perfectly clear on my screen, and it looked good. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm on acid watching this movie. That's entirely possible.
It might be your screen. The only part that really looked muddy for me was during one of the dad's nightmare sequences. His face got a little over grainy in the dark. So again, I not having seen the original video quality, especially thankfully we've got Lance here who has all the technical knowledge about how things are lit for TV versus movies. I wasn't aware of that, especially for the, they were lighting them for the TVs of the time. Whereas now everybody knows that we have like mostly HDR TVs and stuff like that.
Back in the 80s, we're still talking about tube TVs, right?
Yeah, we're talking about tube TVs, bright tube TVs. And
you get up on it and you see your little 3-color pattern making everything.
Right, a standard definition. And then even when you were watching The Wicker Man, did you see that there were scenes that were extra grainy and saturated? Those were added scenes. That's not in the version I watched. That's not in the version that I seen. Those scenes didn't exist. So that means that those
are some reshoots.
Or they were extra scenes that were shot and never put in the original cut, which means those negatives could have been damaged.
And release the Snyder cut of The Appointment. Damn it! So,
we should make
the Vickers cut.
The Vickers cut.
Yeah,
and that's something Lance comes up with, which is an excellent point because this is a pilot. Now, for all we know, this might have been a series. This, it might not have been a movie, an episode, but it feels like because there are things left out here, there are questions unanswered. I wondered if this was actually going to be cut up into a couple of different episodes, this feature-length thing, maybe like 30-minute segments, or was there supposed to be a movie to follow this to help explain some of the things? Because for all my bluster about how much I enjoyed it, and I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But I've also got to admit to its flaws if I'm going to be objective and honest about things. It feels like there's more that's to come because we do have a very abrupt ending, which is not unusual for the time period. It's definitely not unusual for like films of the late 70s and early 80s to have like an abrupt sort of cut to, fade to black, not all your questions are answered. And that goes for foreign films, as well, because back then people would take a lot more chances. They'd be a lot more experimental. This is clearly a very artsy film, which again is quite surprising for a piece of TV, but they were willing to go there. But at the same time, it's not a completely satisfying experience. The tacked on opening, which I enjoyed so much, is a tacked on opening. It's got the unnecessary voiceover, which doesn't fit in the film, and it should end cap the film as well if you're going to do that. Like when you see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre they did in 2008 with Arlie Emery, you have a beginning and an end narration from John LaRoquette. You've got to bookend this stuff. Otherwise, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that's unfortunate because I think we can all realize there was the potential for a good movie to be here.
Absolutely. And when you look at the structure of it too, with the tacked on ending, this is a 90-minute movie. So they tacked on the beginning, X amount of minutes. If you get rid of that, now you're under 90 minutes, maybe and with trimming the movie up, which needed to happen, you're probably at an hour and 20 minutes, and that's the perfect gap for commercials. Right. So I think what they realized is this pilot ain't going to work, and it said in some of the research they still tried to get distribution for it theatrically. Yeah. So they tacked on the beginning And I think they hurt themselves by putting more back into the edit.
Well, I think
So now that it was a
why,
feature instead of a pilot.
I think this is why we have so many shots that linger, because
Yes.
they did try to stretch it out.
It's almost like
So
it's
we've got-
B-roll. So
Yeah,
A lot of padding.
we've got unnecessary time. I would like to see a leaner cut, like maybe even an hour long cut of this film would probably be a lot more satisfying. But we'll never get it unless somebody finds an assault cave somewhere. Somebody has like a lost, reel or the negative of it, which is a shame because I do see the potential of it, and I did enjoy what I got, but I would really like to like it a whole lot more.
Well, I also have to say that pilots are weird animals too. I mean, you look at the pilots of even
You got to shoot your whole load in one go.
Yeah.
but even shows that were good and got picked up. You watch the pilot and they haven't hit their stride yet. A lot of times, Seinfeld's pilot compared to what you eventually got is nowhere near the same.
Right.
Pilot, which is
Compare the cage to Where No
Star
Man Has
Trek.
Gone Before from Star Trek. So
Right,
I mean,
Star Trek
that's the
is a
most
good
famous
example.
example.
yeah. So pilots are just weird. Period. And then to try and turn a pilot into a theatrical release, oh boy. Okay.
It's a last ditch effort. That I think it was their last ditch effort, because if they had that hour, 20 minutes, hour and 16-minute pilot time frame, like a Columbo episode or something, I think this movie would have been a lot better. I think it would have been a lot better.
Because we have seen really good TV movies. If you look at Steven Spielberg's Duel, if you look at the first Kolchak, The Night Stalker,
Yep, exactly.
you can do some really good TV movies. Night of the Scarecrow is a Halloween classic.
Even
It
horror
can be
stuff.
done.
That's I thought, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I thought Stephen King's Rose Red was very good. So which was a made for TV miniseries.
Yeah.
So
So it can be done. It just like Lance said, in order to try and salvage something, make a profit off of all the effort they put into it, they tried to make it into something that it wasn't meant to be.
Right. And nonetheless, I mean, we're all scratching our heads about this, and it's an exploration of what is out there. And chances are, I think we'll set a trend with this. People are going to look this movie up and watch it, and it's like, should you really? All right, well, we're talking about it, and we had a discussion about this.
And I'll say, because usually we come here with films that we've seen or films that we wanted to see, when each of us individually are choosing a film, but because I wanted to find a horror movie with Edward Woodward, this was the only thing I found in his catalog. And so, I took a shot in the dark at something I'd never seen before. So if you end up hating me for it out there, my apologies.
It's one of those things. I will say, it was worth the exploration because I had fresh eyes on it. I thought I knew what it was, and I'm like, this is nothing that I expected. I didn't know what this is.
Well, but I'll say that this was very, not everything we are going to watch we're going to agree on, first of all,
right?
Or like necessarily, second of all, and I thought it was valuable because we talked about a lot of stuff, and it's like, if you go and you check it out. If you like it, put the meds down. No, I mean, if you like it, that's fine. Or whatever, but it's worth looking. We look back at it. All of us came into it and gave it a shot. We have our different takes on it. And I think it was a valuable exercise. Now, am I ever going to watch this movie again? Nope. It's not happening.
It's burned in my mind. I'll never forget it.
Yeah.
No, and that's fun. We often come together and we talk about movies that we do like, even if we haven't seen them before. Like, you guys have introduced me to movies I hadn't seen before, and I ended up loving quite a bit. But it's fun to have that opposite discussion where we come across things that either we discover like, oh, we didn't like this at all, or we have a difference of opinion.
But how boring would it be if we were just all 100% fanboys?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's not going to work. That chemistry doesn't work.
And
Absolutely.
I will also say, and I'm going to go to bat for us here, I don't think that we're mindlessly hating on this film. I think we had valid criticisms of it. And we've talked about the stuff that we liked. You know,
No,
so,
I definitely do not hate on you guys for hating on the film, even though I liked it far more than
yeah.
you did.
I mean, we gave some zingers in there because we're trying to be a little funny and entertaining.
Mhm.
But
Right,
you know,
my kung fu is strong. I can take on all three of you.
yeah. So let's go final thoughts on this. My final thought just is, yeah,
Don't.
yeah, yeah. You heard my final thoughts. You know, if I will stand by it. I fell asleep 5 times watching this movie. Maybe if it had all that cut out, I would have been more invested. Well, you know, but it's like at this point, this is my non-pharmaceutical cure for insomnia. So there it is. I'm going to go reverse order. So I'll go Jeff next. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I'll let folks know what hooked me into this. Like when I was trying to find it, I tried to find a trailer, and instead of a trailer, I kept finding clips, and the clips looked really engaging because I could see how well the best scenes of the movie were put together. I absolutely love the car crash in this, especially for a TV movie. They really go all out, and it's a pretty damn cool scene, and how it all ends in the climax. So, you know, it has its merits. It has its merits. Give it a watch. Give it a watch. You know, make up your own mind. You know, if you're bored after 15 minutes in, I won't hold it against you for cutting it off. But I ended up thinking it was like more cool than not cool.
Fair. Lance.
I think you nailed something them earlier about film school. Watch this to know how to edit and do pacing better. You know what I mean? I think there's an education here. And Jane Merrill looks great in polyester. I mean, flammable, great. And I'll leave it at that.
I look flammable and great. There's your tagline for your publicity photo. So
hot stuff.
She's hot.
Yeah. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I would say watch the first 5 minutes and then turn it off. No, no.
You can find all the best stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, you really could. But yeah, the thing of it is like some of it is instructive. If you want to know how not to make a film, there's definitely a lot in there. I also think that if you're coming in looking for a movie and you really kind of want to riff on something and you're looking for something like really weird to go and kind of make fun of for an evening, maybe this could work for that. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I can see where Jeff is coming from on a lot of levels because, and if you're a writer, you're probably going to fill in a lot of the blanks. And you're probably going to be able to construct a story. But the thing of it is like, you know, everybody's going to come into this putting together a slightly different story than what the filmmakers probably intended, because I don't think they put that much thought into it really. But you know, it might be worth watching once if you can sit through it. If you can't sit through it, and I would not blame anybody for not being able to sit through it, you know, go ahead and kind of leave it and go for something else. This is not something I would typically recommend. But if you've got out there tastes, if you're somebody who likes pain, watching things, yes, Jeff, you are one of those. You know, then you know maybe there's some value in this for you. I mean, I wouldn't completely reject it, but I would say if you're looking for a proper, typical movie-going experience, you know, where you get everything, you know, beginning, middle, and end, and it all comes together properly and all of that, this is not your movie. But if you're looking for something a little bit offbeat and you're kind of looking for something that maybe doesn't work, but maybe in a way that you can find some value in, even if it's not traditional value, then you know I would say think about it. But yeah, this is probably not a movie I would go back and rewatch.
All right. So those are our final thoughts on this film. I'm going to wrap this up by announcing our next movie.
Should I guess? Can I make a guess?
Sure, go for it.
The Lion in the Winter.
Yes, The Lion in Winter. So we are going to The Lion in Winter because I need to go to something that
we need a break from the last 3 movies, you mean?
Yeah. So The Lion in Winter does bring forward Jane Merrill, who plays Alice in it, but this Lance has got a whole treasure trove of actors to choose from: Peter O'Toole, Katharine Hepburn, Anthony Hopkins, John Castle, Timothy Dalton, Nigel Terry, Nigel Stock. I mean, Kenneth Ives. The list goes on and
It
on.
goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the thing is, like our last 3 movies in a row now, or so, or like all these British productions, and the British productions always have this laundry list of amazing actors to pull from for our choices. So,
I will say to all of you who get a chance, it's to the 3 of you, these movies are not tied together, but if you want greater context into Peter O'Toole's character, who is Henry II, watch Beckett, which came out 4 years before this, also starring Peter O'Toole as a young Henry II, and all of the things that happened around the eventual murder of Thomas
Beckett.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
I will second this movie, Beckett. It is very, very good. I watched it like way
Who will
back.
rid me of this
It was really,
Archbishop
really
of
nice.
Canterbury?
Yeah.
So, and Peter O'Toole, I would say next to Lawrence of Arabia, this is probably his defining movie. So, you know,
I would, for those of you out there and those of you who are my friends here, if you've never seen it, go check out My Favorite Year with Peter O'Toole.
Yep.
Fantastic movie.
and if you want to turn your brain off, go watch High Spirits with Peter O'Toole.
Oh yes, High Spirits.
Oh gosh, I
Liam
didn't watch
Neeson.
that.
Liam Neeson's in there
Liam
too.
Neeson was young, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna. That's a great pick, but I'm gonna jump also ahead and announce what I want to watch.
Oh,
Okay.
The Stuntman, 1980.
yes,
All right.
yes,
All right.
yes.
So
One of my
you hear-
favorite films ever.
You,
Yes.
you heard here first. So we, everyone, we're going to be doing The Lion of Winter next week,
Thank you, Lance.
and then we will be doing The Stuntman the week after. So we've got some great films lined up for you. This format just continues to deliver. I think we have found our groove.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
loved
want to
it.
stop this anytime soon. Although we are very much stuck in Britain, so eventually we will get to other places. But
Well, the Stuntman does bring us back to America.
yeah,
It does
So,
with
yeah.
with Steve Rails back as well, which
Yep.
we did Life Force. You know,
Indeed.
Yep. So it is going to be great. I am really looking forward to this. 2 great movies coming up in the next 2 weeks. You know, this movie was valuable for what we were able to discuss, and we always love to discuss cinema with you. So, on behalf of myself, Comic Crusaders, the Undercover Capes Podcast Network, and these fine gentlemen who are fellow Cinema Crusaders with me, I want to thank you all for watching this episode of Cinema Crusaders. Make sure you keep that popcorn warm, keep that comfy chair comfy, watch some cinema this weekend, and we'll see
And
you
bring
next
the
week.
salt.
Yes, and drink and take your meds. So, bye, everybody.
see.